NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly Aldano joins me now, and also with me is NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Cheung. Thank you so much for joining us. And Kelly, President Trump told Kristen on Sunday that he wasn't concerned with the markets, but rather right track, wrong track polling. So two new polls do show that Americans are concerned with his handling of the economy. Is that setting off any alarm bells in the West Wing?
Well, at this point, there has been a real sense of support behind the president's ideas. Where there seems to be a lot of uncertainty is the details. In the clips that you just played, Gabe, we heard the president say he heard a rumor it might be 15 countries. He is the architect of this policy, and yet he was not able to give a very specific plan. We know a lot of the outlines. We know his broad intentions. He said all of the countries. Again, that would go beyond U.S. trading partners. And part of what the markets and certainly the broader community that tracks this are looking for is the kind of specifics that can help them plan. He also talks about the automobiles, and that is a very complicated assembly process and manufacturing process. And for many years, the trade policies in the United States and elsewhere lend themselves toward putting that in a much broader way, not one vehicle built within one country, but parts coming from lots of different places as a part of a broader outreach. Not something you can change overnight. So the president believes strongly that this will bring in revenue for the U.S. Treasury at a time when he would like to use that money for other things, including his plan to renew tax cuts. There has not been a sense of wavering from the White House. This is a critical week coming up as the president will roll out this plan.
Yeah, Kelly, and do we have any more clarity about what the president has repeatedly called Liberation Day? The White House obviously looking to make this a big event. Do we know what it'll include?
Well, certainly the president is using his branding and marketing skills. They're calling it Liberation Day to suggest that somehow the United States would be freed from trade imbalances by doing this. That is their branding. That is their way of talking about it. Certainly the broader markets and the economic sectors that are affected by this, and everyday Americans who will eventually pay more if they have to buy goods that are affected by this, can make their own determination on what this launch day is really about. We expect the president to have sort of a ceremony, as we've seen, where he likes to do his economic pronouncements and to package that with an event. And so we expect that to happen as well. And then we'll really be looking for the real world implications of what is happening and how do other nations respond and so forth.
Now, Brian, I want to turn to you. Walk us through what we've seen so far from the Trump administration on tariffs and what it all means going forward.
Yeah, because people listening to this might be saying deja vu. I mean, I thought we were talking about tariffs, and that's because we have over the last 2 months. Just to kind of refresh everyone on exactly what tariffs are in effect and which ones aren't, there's the 20% on all imports coming in from China. It was 10% slapped on in the first week of February, another 10% the first week of March. Then there was the 25% on aluminum and steel imports that we got recently, and just last week, the ones that were announced, the 25% on foreign car and parts imports that'll actually kick in later on this week, Wednesday into Thursday night. There's also the 25% on non-USMCA goods. This refers to that trade agreement that the Trump administration negotiated in the first term. And these tariffs on Canada and Mexico will ratchet up and cover all goods effective April 2nd later on this week. As you remember, these were just kind of concessions that were temporary over the course of the month. But of course, these have not existed in a vacuum because all these other countries have had these retaliatory tariffs. So starting off with China, they slapped first in response to the first round oil and coal imports from the United States, then really hitting the agricultural sector where it hurts soybeans, chicken, other types of meat products. Canada had 2 rounds of retaliatory tariffs themselves as well, covering poultry, peanut butter, and then the second round, things like game consoles and iron products. The EU threatening these retaliatory tariffs happening in mid-April, just weeks from now, on all these types of products, including American motorcycles, American agricultural products, and American meat as well, while Canada has said TBA, it depends on what the United States does. Of course, over all of this, we have seen the stock market really go through some pretty substantial turmoil. We are down about 7% since the beginning of the Trump administration. And I want to point out that as the tariff war ratcheted up, it began in the beginning of February. That times exactly with where we saw the beginning of the S&P 500 spill off. And even today, it seemed like at the market open, it was going to be a nasty day, although it just managed to eke as of 4 p.m. In the green.
Yeah, Brian, talk to me about that. Why do you think there wasn't a sharper downturn today if markets are indeed so jittery?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, trying to explain why markets do anything on a given day is as akin to looking into a crystal ball. But when it comes to the jitters this morning, investors seem to carry over some of the concern about what the tariffs will look like. The challenge is between Friday and today, there was no more certainty, no more clarity into exactly what these tariffs that are reciprocal that will be implemented on April 2nd will look like, beyond the fact that they will be implemented on April 2nd. I was actually just speaking with an automaker earlier today that was saying we have no more clarity into this because, as Kelly was saying, President Donald Trump is the architect of all of this. He could decide on Wednesday morning to structure this completely differently. That uncertainty is the reason why there's been that volatility.
Brian Cheung at the big board, thanks so much for keeping track of all of it. And there is a lot to keep track of. And Kelly, stick with me here because, as I said, there's a lot more in Kristen's exclusive interviews. In addition to what he said about tariffs and the markets, President Trump also refused to rule out seeking a third term in office, which, of course, is prohibited by the Constitution. The president telling Kristen, quote, "A lot of people want me to do it. My thinking is we have a long way to go." And he went on to say, quote, "There are methods which you could do it." The president insisted to Kristen that he was, quote, "not joking about the possibility of a third term," although he has joked about it in the past.
It will be the greatest honor of my life to serve not once, but twice, or 3 times, or 4 times. I've raised a lot of money for the next race that I assume I can't use for myself, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't know. I think I'm not allowed to run again. I'm not sure. Am I allowed to run again? They say I can't run again. That's the expression. Sir. Then somebody said, I don't think you can. Should I run again? You tell me. There's your controversy right there.
And Kelly, President Trump mentioned methods for seeking a third term. Does the White House have a specific method in mind? And we can't keep saying it enough, a reminder that this would be unconstitutional.
Well, and the president swore to uphold the Constitution, so we can't look past that either. Clearly, the president often talks about things that are of interest to him, first in a joking manner, first for entertainment value on the campaign trail and so forth. And then some of those bubble up to the policy level where it becomes serious. So we've learned across many topics to take him at his word that these are things he's interested in. Certainly, there would be a way to bring forward in Congress a change to the Constitution, and then it would have to go to the state legislatures across the country. That is a very heavy lift, and it requires not a simple majority, but 2/3 and 3/4 of the vote. Very hard to do. It's been a long time since we've had a change to the Constitution. And certainly this one was brought about limiting a president to 2 terms, in part because the idea of a republic electing new leadership, not having successive presidencies that go beyond 2 terms. This, of course, is his second non-consecutive term. FDR served 4 and died in office. And we left the United Kingdom because we did not want a monarchy back in the day. So those are all real world forces that are going against this. Some of this is about the president echoing what he believes is his popularity and his strength among voters. There's also the reality of his age. He'll be 79 in June. He appears robust and healthy, but we also know that voters at times are not as confident when candidates at the federal level or 4 members of Congress are older than 80 years old. Often that becomes an age question. Whether that's fair or not, that's just one of the realities of politics. So we take him at his word that he's interested. We'll watch this space very closely to see if there are any changes in the mechanisms. Will any member of Congress come forward with that to try to propose it? Otherwise, the president, as he said, he's got a long way to go in this term.
Yeah, and our Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles just said he spoke with Steve Scalise, who said that there are no plans to change any of that at this moment. But Kelly, the president also told Kristen that he was, quote, angry and, quote, pissed off at Vladimir Putin and threatened new tariffs on Russian oil. What's going on there?
Well, that's very notable because the president is often criticized, or at least it's pointed out that he often appears to be in sort of affinity with Vladimir Putin, deferential to him and that kind of thing. Now, the president would say he's often been very tough on Russia, but for him to speak in a harsher tone against Vladimir Putin is certainly notable. He also has a lot on the line himself. The president has said he could bring about a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine after Russia illegally invaded invaded Ukraine 3 years ago. And the fact that Russia has not been as cooperative as the president would like is notable. Volodymyr Zelensky said you can't trust Russia, and he is also concerned about how to bring about peace. So it's a thorny issue, a very complicated issue. And so for the president to say he could bring about new tariffs or sanctions on Russia does stand out. Only a week or so ago, he talked about opening markets to Russia if they were to reach this agreement. So that is also something where we expect to have another call between the president and Vladimir Putin at some point this week. We're waiting to learn more, and that may take us to the next chapter of what has been a very intense back and forth.
And we'll certainly be watching that call. Kelly O'Donnell, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.